So anyway, I'm Keith, and I'm one of the original 8 kids that started Food Not Bombs. And we had been active in the anti-nuclear movement and had several big actions. And in one case where there was 1,000, whatever that is, over 1,000 people arrested. And then we were doing these occupation attempts where we tried to take over the nuclear power station construction site to keep them from building the nuclear power station. In one of those actions, one of our friends got arrested on May 24th, 1980, and our affinity group, which were 8 anarchists, decided that we needed to do a number of things. One, to support our friend Brian, and the other to organize in the urban area that we live, Boston, and try to reach the regular people with the ideas of anarchism. And in particular, a couple of those ideas were that we would make decisions without hierarchy, and that we would introduce this idea through taking direct action on a regular basis. So what we started to do was collect food that couldn't be sold. We would make it into meals and bring groceries out onto the streets and hand them out to people, anyone going by for free, which caught people's attention. They were shocked that the food was free. And then we would encourage them to work with us, and then by doing that, they would learn that we were using a process called the consensus process to make decisions. And we'd introduce people to that idea. And then the second idea we were trying to introduce to the general public was what has now become called DIY, or do it yourself. That we weren't like appealing to the government for changes, or that we were trying to build campaigns to get politicians and corporations to cooperate with us. That we would just like start building our own society the way we thought it should be organized, and in a non-hierarchical, decentralized way. And then, other thing that we were interested in was trying to show a link between different issues. So when we started, there were campaigns against, say, the nuclear power station, but those people didn't often talk about the links of capitalism to that power station. And so early on we had an action at the Bank of Boston where we protested the policies of the board of directors by claiming that if they continued, it would lead to a future where there would end up being so much poverty that people would have to stand in line to eat at soup kitchens, as people had done in the Great Depression. So we set up our own soup line outside the stockholders meeting with banners and information. We invited the homeless to come and participate with us, and there was a huge action that kind of indicated that this was trying to get across the idea that we ourselves could feed people because we brought all this food and fed all these people. We didn't really need the bankers, but at the same time, we needed the bankers to stop making policies and investing in things like the nuclear power station, and that we were willing to directly disrupt their ability to build this nuclear power station by getting in the way of the construction equipment, by occupying their construction site. So we had like this multi-level idea of introducing both the concepts and ideals of anarchism, but also organizing directly to stop like ecological destruction, as we feared would happen if Seabrook did go online. And then we can see shortly after that campaign, you had 3 Mile Island, you had Chernobyl, then you have Fukushima. You keep seeing these disasters. So we were not wrong in resisting this nuclear power station. But also, we were interested in connecting many other issues And there was, even at that time, climate change was starting to be a concern in the 1980s. And also trying to install solutions like organic gardening, permaculture, solar energy, wind energy, as being an alternative that we ourselves could do to try to confront the issue of climate change and environmental destruction. So this happened, it started even as early as 1980 when we started as Food Not Bombs. We there ended up being kind of by accident, unfortunately, several sort of a number of different focuses of Food Not Bombs. The first one from 1980, and it continues to this day, was organizing campaigns and providing food at campaigns and supporting actions to defend the environment. One of the more famous ones was Redwood Summer, where Judy Berry and Daryl Cherney were blown up by what is certain to be FBI-inspired plot. This was a campaign where they were going to clear cut the redwood trees in Northern California, the oldest trees, some of the oldest trees in the world, some of them 2,000 years old, to prop up the finances of a company called Maxam, who had invested in junk bonds and who needed to clear all the trees so that he could meet his financial obligations for his investments. Not because it was a good idea to harvest the trees or the people needed the wood or paper, but just for his own personal financial gain. And in his effort to defend his right to do that, they involved the FBI and other law enforcement and ended up bombing two of my friends. But also during that time, we were in the trees, climbing in the trees, blocking the logging trucks, doing whatever we could to slow the clear cut and to disrupt what was happening that was devastating the forest. And Food Not Bombs itself would provide meals at the base camp so that people could stay in the woods all summer during 1989, during Redwood Summer. And Food Not Bombs has participated in many similar actions since, where we have organized campaigns in the urban area to try to build support amongst the general public, mobilize them to go to the forest or go to an area that is needs to be protected, and then we provide the meals to sustain those actions and have that pattern. But then the next problem, however, turned out to be natural disasters and climate crisis disasters. And the first natural disaster that Food Not Bombs happened to be on the scene for was the earthquake in San Francisco in 1989. And as it turned out, we were preparing food that we would share every day, twice a day, lunch and dinner, as part of a daily action against poverty and the anti-homeless laws that were being passed in our community. And we would use that twice daily action to promote issues like Redwood Summer and so on. And so one day we're making a bunch of food to go down to City Hall where our protest happened. When the earthquake caused the electricity and gas to go off. So this gave us the idea, because we had done an occupation with homeless people a year before, to take our propane stoves and our cooking equipment and go down to City Hall and finish preparing our meal, figuring that many people would need the food. To our surprise, we ended up being the only people providing food to the survivors of the earthquake. And it turned out, because of our method of organizing, using the consensus process, being an all-volunteer effort, not waiting for funding from somewhere or permission from somewhere, ignoring like whether there were laws and rules and so on, because at that time it was illegal for us to share food in San Francisco. We just went out and fed people on our regular schedule. Finished cooking the food on propane stoves and fed thousands of people, including the same police that had been arresting us the day before. And so about 3 or 4 days later, the Red Cross arrived to help out with this major disaster. Unfortunately for the people of San Francisco, the Red Cross set up only in the Marina District, which was a very wealthy neighborhood. And when they realized that homeless people who had maybe been homeless before the earthquake started to arrive to get the fancy lobster dinners, they realized that they had to ID everyone, get their driver's license, and make sure they were from that rich community before they get some food. And this would be a lesson to food not bombs and future disasters, because this becomes a pattern on a couple of ways. One, the Red Cross, which gets a lot of funding and it's on TV and everything, they want to provide food to the new disaster survivors because this benefits them to get more financial support. But also they want to go to only the rich neighborhood and feed the wealthy people because then they're more likely to get contributions. So thousands and thousands of poor people in San Francisco, many who lost their homes, had no food unless they ate food not bombs. And so that became a real strong lesson to us about disaster relief. So we continue with our campaigns to address the causes of climate change, trying to link capitalism as an economic system that is responsible for policies of like highway building and using only cars instead of mass transit, of extracting coal instead of alternative energy to produce electricity. That basically they have known all along that they are causing climate change, they're profiting from it, and that it will be a disaster for millions of people around the world. They have known this all along. And so then the next disaster that was very large for food not bombs and even taught us more was Katrina. So we had been sharing food at a protest against the war in Iraq for the summer, where this woman, Cindy Sheehan, was out camping outside of George Bush's summer home when we heard about Katrina. So Food Not Bombs talked to other like Veterans for Peace and the Rainbow Family, and we said, let's go and help with the rescue effort. We were assuming the Red Cross would come and maybe the Federal Emergency Management Agency and stuff, but we knew that they would be overwhelmed because it was the largest superstorm of its kind up to that date. To our surprise, when we got there, there were military blockades, not allowing people south to New Orleans and so on. We ended up, they asked for a letter of permission. Well, we had no such thing, so we made our own letter of permission and gave it to ourselves and put it in our buses, and we went south to do the relief effort. The second thing that was crazy was that it turned out that the Red Cross and FEMA were not going to come and help the people. So Food Not Bombs was the primary group of people doing the food relief. Other anarchists like Common Grounds Collective, Mayday Collective, and many other just anarchist affinity groups from all over Canada and the United States mobilized, and we did things like free the people from the roofs of their houses. Many people were stuck in their attics, and we would have to take axes and break the roofs open to free them. We had our own first aid that we were doing. We also, and as I said, we organized cleanups of people's buildings and so on. So this taught many people, not only Food Not Bombs and other anarchists in the United States, but others in the general community, that the only people you can depend on in a disaster in the United States are anarchists, because we're the only ones that are actually going to show up. We're only ones that are going to be there. The Red Cross even gave out our toll-free number as the way to get food. And for 8 months, we were just overwhelmed with doing this one disaster relief. So then we ended up with Sandy. Same thing happened. There was Occupy Sandy, and there was Food Not Bombs. We did this massive relief in Long Island, Food Not Bombs was responsible for providing literally thousands of tons of food and providing all kinds of support for the people that were like wiped out. There were several 100,000 homes destroyed, and it turned out the Red Cross failed again to show this time. There was still no government support, and it ended up that it was essentially anarchists in the United States that provided the relief for the survivors of Sandy. So then, shortly after that, in January, there was a conference of anarchist scholars in New Orleans. And many of the people that attended had participated in Hurricane Katrina relief. So we started to have a discussion about that. And it came out of the discussion during the weekend conference. It was decided, because of the principles of anarchism, that we are able to be more responsive, more fluid, able to respond more quickly and to disasters, and that since we're everywhere, and if a disaster hits, we're already there because their anarchists are all over the country, that we would try to organize our own disaster relief system and write a manual. And this has become a very large project of anarchists across North America. At the same time that's happening, we realize that climate change crisis and capitalism really do not know any borders. That for instance, in North America, you have the problem of the Keystone XL pipeline coming from the tar sands in Alberta, Canada, going through the United States down to the refineries in the Gulf of Mexico. So there are activists in a campaign called Idle No More in Canada, which Food Not Bombs is helping provide food for. We've been blocking the roads and railroads and highways, bridges, in a massive protest that's gone on for several months now to stop the mining and the oil exploration and all the other carbon extractions that have been happening in Canada. And Native American people in the United States have also joined. So at the same time, we're blocking the pipelines throughout where it's passing through the United States. And once I came over here to the Philippines, I learned that traveling in the Philippines and in Indonesia, that the same policies that we're fighting against in North America are happening here, with special train lines to take coal and gold and other minerals and logs off to seaports, which are destroying not only the forest and the land, but they're also destroying the sea. And at the same time, these extractions are contributing to global greenhouse poisoning. And you can see that they have the master plan for Indonesia. It's the same idea that's happening there. And so the actual struggle to defend the earth against the policies that are causing the climate change catastrophes are universal. And as anarchists, since we are not nationalists or recognizing national borders, and that we're working in a horizontal structure without any central form of control, that we're positioned possibly better than most to help organize a global response to the climate change crisis and to take direct action. Because as we can see before in the first presentation with Bas, the governments are not taking any initiative to curb climate change. They're actually promoting climate change policies. And you have people like Obama who have stepped up fracking in America, who have stepped up coal mining in America, oil exploration, all the reducing passenger train service, doing everything possible in his policies to make the future Sandys and Katrinas more likely. So it's really back to do it yourself. It's up to us as people to organize and resist, to try to bring as many other people into the community to resist, to understand what is happening, to take it seriously, to see that it's a future danger, and to see that it's a direct result of the economic and political systems that we all live under now, and that it's our responsibility to dismantle those systems and replace them with something that is actually sustainable, so that our children and grandchildren will actually have a natural environment and will not be living under total climate change chaos all the time. And so, you know, that I think is kind of the message that anarchists all over the world are trying to express, and that's definitely something that Food Not Bombs, while we're not all anarchists, our principles are based on anarchism, is trying to do in all the 1,000 cities that we're active in around the world. Thanks.